He remembers that he was the author of the story, and he was recalling his work to narrate. He was the author of the novel he imagined every day for the past 2 years to write. He knew everything about the world and the characters. So, he wanted to borrow the power of the strongest swordsman in his novel. He tries again to use his ability, and this time he gets a message telling him that the power gap was too big and he had 100% probabilities of dying. He tried but it didn't work. Another message pops up asking him to choose a target of immersion again. He finally remembers the character he wanted to immerse, and he uses immersion again. Suddenly, he gets another message telling him that he got a unique ability called Immersion. He couldn't believe that he got an ability even though he didn't have any talent. With this ability, he could become an attacker, but he thinks that it was all useless delusions. He tried to activate the ability thousands of times in the last few days. Every time he tried to activate it, he got a message by the system telling him that he failed to activate Immersion. The system had so many requirements to activate the ability. So, he leaves and goes to a supermarket to buy more beer. While buying, he thinks that he had to find out a way to borrow the power. But once he started the academy, he couldn't climb over others no matter how hard he tried. No matter how hard he trained himself, he couldn't beat them. That's why he decided to take a leave of absence and stayed in his room, and threw away the only chance he had of becoming an adventurer. We come back to the present, where some years had passed since he left the academy. If he stayed in the academy, he would be in the 3rd year by now. But instead of chasing an impossible dream, he started to write fake stories. A story about a swordsman who cut the horizon, a hunter who lived his whole life in the forest of death, then the creator of magic. In the early days when the towers were first created, countless rankers tried the challenge of attacking the tower. The rankers who succeeded in attacking the tower were given regressing skills, or they gained authority and public attention. But right now, the difficulty of the tower had increased, and it was almost impossible to attack. Even so, the attackers trying to challenge the tower haven't stopped. He wonders if those who keep trying after failing were perverts. Then again, there is also a saying that you will succeed in life even just by attacking alone. Strangely enough, no one had been able to enter the Sword Master's tower, even the high rankers. Saren helps him to get up and tells him that he did pretty well since he had no unique ability. The protagonist couldn't believe that he did all that with his own hands. He responds to her that his body started to move after he got cornered, and it was all thanks to the academy training. His unique ability could let him borrow any person's strength as long as he was strong enough. But this power has side effects such as getting pain because his body was very weak. To use his ability more often, he had to train his body to improve his stamina. The day after, he wakes up by the noise of his phone. He gets a message by Saren telling him sorry. He lets his guard down, and the demon wolf gets near him. The wolf jumps to attack the protagonist, but he dodges in time, but gets hit. He takes a signpost as a weapon. The wolf attacks him again, but this time he manages to block the attack with the signpost. But the signpost was very weak, and he wondered if he could block another attack. He doesn't know what to do since Saren couldn't help him because she was protecting the civilians. He wanted to use his unique ability, Immersion. He remembers that he was the author of the story, and he was recalling his work to narrate. He was the author of the novel he imagined every day for the past 2 years to write. In order to achieve his dream, he started to study very hard. As he studied more and more, his understanding about mana and mutation started increasing. And when he was about to read all the books in his country related to the dungeon adventurers, he got the first rank on the written exam. Now, he was able to enroll in the Adventurer Academy where only the elites could enroll. He couldn't believe that he could finally achieve his dream. But once he started the academy, he couldn't climb over others no matter how hard he tried. No matter how hard he trained himself, he couldn't beat them. He didn't have any unique ability that only adventurers gain. He wonders if those who keep trying after failing were perverts. Then again, there is also a saying that you will succeed in life even just by attacking alone. Strangely enough, no one had been able to enter the Sword Master's tower, even the high rankers. He finally arrives at the Sword Master's tower. After running for a while, he arrives at the entrance of the tower. At the entrance, there was a big stone with some text written. He touches the stone, and gets a message telling him that he was feeling the energy of one of the 7 heroes. He thinks that he was the only one who could see the messages, when suddenly someone tells him to not touch everything. He gets a message by Saren telling him sorry. He gets up from the bed, but he still has pain in his muscles. So, he falls down off the bed. He sees that he got a missed call from Saren. He calls back Saren, and she tells him sorry and she didn't want to talk about it because he didn't like being involved with the academy. But somehow, he got uploaded to an article within a day. He reads the comments and gets mad reading some negative comments. But he finds some good comments and gets happy. He suddenly gets a message in his chat. He opens the chat and sees that someone was desperate to meet with him. Suddenly a message appeared telling that the world was searching for a new record to build towers. The world had found the perfect setting used in a novel that could be applied to the tower, and the world started generating a tower of the same settings. And finally, a tower gets created in their world. Our protagonist wakes up by the noise of the TV that he didn't have turned off last night. The newsman says that a total of 5 new towers had been built in their country, and the name of the tower was the Sword That Cuts the Horizon, Executor of Evil, and the Black Divine Spear. The protagonist is shocked when he hears this. The newsman says that a total of 5 new towers had been built in their country, and the name of the tower was the Sword That Cuts the Horizon, Executor of Evil, and the Black Divine Spear. The protagonist is shocked when he hears this. Another man on the TV says that they thought they were getting closer to peace, but now there were new towers and dungeons, and now a total of 7 new towers with the highest rank had been found. The protagonist couldn't believe his ears, so he quickly opens the laptop and sees that his novel was gone. It simply disappeared, even all the original documents he saved. He wonders if he was still sleeping. Eden tells him that he didn't only give him skills. The protagonist opens the stat window and sees that he had gained a new passive skill and all his mana limits had disappeared. It was like a cheat. Seeing this, he quickly leaves his house and goes to the first test center to check his combat ability level and his new skills. A new message pops up saying that someone around him was using mana. Thanks to this, he turns around and dodges a soda can. This soda can had been thrown by Han Yujil, who was furious after seeing the protagonist. He was Yeoman's classmate in the academy and had a rare unique ability. Eden was his dream life character. Eden leaves, saying to him that he called him and lowered the difficulty so he had to get out by himself. He was left alone, but he didn't have a choice, and he only had 50 minutes before the monsters were going to flock in. So, he starts exploring the area to search for some information. After searching for a while, he steps on some wood pieces. He takes the wood piece and sees the name Eden, then a message pops up telling him that he had obtained an additional keyword. He was in the first episode of his novel, the place where the talentless young boy was awakened as a genius. He attacks the monster, but the monster swallows his attack. Then he notices that the monster had a crystal in his nape, and discovers that this was his weak spot. Now he had to aim for that weak spot, deep and strong. He jumps and attacks the crystal, defeating the monster. He had defeated the Iron Wolf and had a hunting time of 4 minutes and 50 seconds. Everyone watching was impressed. Han Yujil wonders if he was the same person that he used to bully in the academy. The protagonist comes out of the test room and wonders how he had become that strong, and thinks that it was because he took a break for 2 years. And his growth was pretty slow. He could have used immersion more freely if he trained more. A TV reporter was live broadcasting, telling everyone that there were numerous attackers in front of the tower. It had been 2 weeks since the tower was built, and since then, no one had been invited to the tower. She goes to interview a handsome attacker. While she was interviewing him, suddenly a message pops up in front of the tower saying that the first floor of the Swordmaster Tower had been cleared, and no one else will longer have the qualification to enter the tower. The 2 cameramen thought that since no one of the attackers had been invited, it was cleared by a monstrous rookie. So they head to the entrance to get a chance of getting an exclusive interview, and they tell the reporter to come with them. He quickly cuts the F-class monster in half within 3 seconds, beating his previous record of 32 seconds. As his record was shortened, now the difficulty went from the lowest to low. He gets very happy after seeing that he had beaten his previous record. Now a new monster appeared. Outside, some people were watching him doing the test. Han Yujil notices that one of them was Kaewei Bamjoon. He was a zero-generation attacker. He attacked the Tower of Zeus and finished it. He had 7 unique skills. Han Yujil, seeing this, comes close to Bamjoon and tells him that he wanted to learn from him and if he wanted to take a look at his sparring clip. If you touch anything imprudently, you could get invited into the tower. That's why ability users shouldn't touch it recklessly. The protagonist responds to him that there was no way that he would get invited because he was very weak. He thinks that even if he gets invited, he would run away. Then another message pops up, saying that the true owner of the 7 towers was resonating with the tower. And as a response, the owner of the tower invited him back. The protagonist is teleported inside the tower. Someone inside the tower wonders why someone was loitering around in front of his tower. He starts getting bothered, and judging by the protagonist's mana, he thinks that he was an ordinary person. He enters the gate to start with the evaluation. The system gets activated and he gets his recognition, and he chooses the lowest difficulty. He chose the lowest because he wanted to climb up slowly. A new F-class monster gets spawned. Now he had to choose his weapon to fight the monster. To confirm his stats, the requirements should be the same as when he was a student. He chooses the sword, then a sword appears in his hand. He feels his body light now, just like when he used immersion. He wanted to see how much he had changed since then. He quickly cuts the F-class monster in half within 3 seconds, beating his previous record of 32 seconds. As his record was shortened, now the difficulty went from the lowest to low. He was in the space of the predators, and his goal was to get away from the first floor before they attack. And a monster was about to spawn in an hour. He was an ordinary person without any attack skills who entered the tower. He made a bone-breaking effort to climb up the tower, but in the end, he was an unqualified attacker because of the pejorative label he received after he got last place in the practical tests. He thinks that even if he had awakened a unique ability, he couldn't attack the tower. Suddenly, a purple message pops up in front of his face, telling him why he was still standing like a scarecrow and makes fun of him. He preferred dying this rather than dying helplessly. Dying after putting his best into surviving was 1,000 times better. He uses the remaining mana with all his force, and finally transfers it into the wooden sword. Then he gets a new message saying him that the first floor had been successfully cleared, but doing this he died. Now the sword was paying tributes to his death, and now he had unlocked a hidden strategy. Outside the tower, a TV reporter was live broadcasting, telling everyone that there were numerous attackers in front of the tower. It had been 2 weeks since the tower was built, and since then, no one had been invited to the tower. Seeing him hurt, she taught him how to control his mana. After that, Eden's mana had stabilized a lot, and she became a magic teacher in the rural village. Now that he had purified his mana, the condition for immersion was fulfilled. He took a stick and sticks it into the ground with force, and activated immersion and chose Daria Marsha as the character he wanted to immerse. Now her blessing of magic were covering him. Eden was surprised that he had the same mana that his master. The protagonist had refined the poured mana and collected it in his heart, and started bringing it back from his heart to his fingertips. And lastly, he was pouring all the mana, but suddenly he gets a warning saying him that his mana was being severely depleted as he was transferring all his mana into the wooden sword. He tasted the plant, but it was bitter. Now that he had tasted it, his body was refusing to eat it. He realized that he only had 45 minutes left until the monster wave. So he starts eating the plant even though he didn't like the taste. He had to eat as many as he could before the 45 minutes. After 30 minutes, he couldn't eat anymore. He had eaten more than 40 plants. His stomach was being turned upside down. Now his mana had increased, and as well the limit of mana that his body could tolerate. His body balance was very unstable at this point. Now that he had some mana, he meditates and start pouring all his mana into the wooden sword just as Eden did. Han Yujil wanted to beat him now again that they meet again. But just before fighting, someone said that now Academy guys were wild these days. Han Yujil didn't want Ko Bam-jun to notice him fighting, so he leaves, telling the protagonist that he was lucky today, and he better be ready for the next time they meet. The protagonist wanted to show him his new power, but for now, he held back because he wanted to focus on the evaluation. He enters the gate to start with the evaluation. The system gets activated, and he gets his recognition, and he chooses the lowest difficulty. He chose the lowest because he wanted to climb up slowly. Han Yujil wonders if he was the same person that he used to bully in the academy. The protagonist comes out of the test room and wonders how he had become that strong, and thinks that it was because he took a break for 2 years, and his growth was pretty slow. He could have used immersion more freely if he trained more. He wanted to immerse as Eden and wondered if his arrogant personality would get immersed in him. Bam-jun comes across him and tells him that his early performance was pretty good. He used academy-style swordsmanship. He asks him if he was an enrolled student. The protagonist sees that Han Yujil was with him. He gets nervous and responds that he was on a leave of absence right now, because the instructors didn't teach him properly. Bam-jun comes out and tells him that he should become his disciple. The protagonist was surprised that someone strong like him wanted to train a nerd without any ability like him. It was an honor for the protagonist. Han Yujil was jealous because he always worked hard and he was more skilled than him, but still, he was the one who got all the attention. The next day, the protagonist was in his room resting, because Bam-jun told him to rest while he was going to prepare his training, because after the training starts, he would be begging for mercy. But he would have no mercy even if he was dead, and the training wouldn't stop. So, while resting, he tries to collect more information. He sees that he had opened a page with someone asking if someone had seen the winning prize in the potion-making competition. Eden tells him that it was a bastium, a rare ore that appears in the Age of Destruction. The bastium was an ancient fragment, proof that God actually exists. Even though the royal family values it highly and buys it every year, after all the years, they had been able to gather only 30 kilograms of it. That's how precious this mineral was within his novel, but he thinks that it only looked like a stone. Eden asks him if he knew how to make a potion. The protagonist replies that he was not skilled in making potions. After that day, he immersed himself as a low-class alchemist for 2 hours. And one thing that he overlooked is the fact that Eden was a hard worker. After all the knowledge he taught, his head was going to burst. He sees that among the participants, there was Reynold, the son of the master Reynold. The craftsmen and above were prohibited from participating, but they were all heavyweights. When the adventurers bring different materials from the tower and dungeon, The producers are people who make items using those materials. The association has given the titles of craftsmen to only 38 of them. And even among them, they picked 8 best craftsmen and gave them the title of master craftsmen. The protagonist gets super mad, and the only thing he was thinking now was to beat his ass in the contest. The time allocated was 2 hours, you just have to pick a herb and make a potion. They were quite good, considering it was an amateur contest. Reynolds sees the protagonist standing still and thinks that he was image training during the contest. He leaves, thinking that he was a loser and he had no time to lose. At Bayam-jun's house, some workers were installing gravity-controlling magic circles and mana concentration magic circles. One of the workers tells Bayam-jun that his new apprentice was talented. Potions were medicine, in other words, it was an item for healing an injured person. It had a good effect and was easy to bring around. Enrolling in a potion-making school was extremely difficult. It was really hard. If you simply knew how to make a low-class potion, all kinds of guilds wanted to scout you. But he created a potion in his first try. He created a substandard health recovering potion. After that day, he immersed himself as a low-class alchemist for 2 hours. And one thing that he overlooked is the fact that Eden was a hard worker. After all the knowledge he taught, his head was going to burst. Eden was impressed, and he could feel someone else's energy that was way different from the time he was learning alchemy. Finally, he absorbs all the knowledge thanks to the fact that he trained last week. He runs towards the plant zone and sees that all the plants were taken by the other participants while he was busy immersing. Now the only plants left were the poison ones. Seeing that he had no other choice, he takes the poison ones and goes back to his table. Each drop of this poison plant's extracts could kill thousands of people. It was dangerous, but he didn't have any other choice. If he failed, the poisonous effect would hugely increase, and not only this place, but a few miles of radius from this place would explode. Constantly, all the people start clapping, and the presenter tells them that a double-class potion had appeared. And Junmin made the soul-class potion. Ranald couldn't believe that he had succeeded. He had made a potion of fire that increases the mana temporarily and gives fire resistance. And his unique ability had increased because of his concentration, and as well as his limit to his skill usage. The protagonist replies that he was an autodidact. They both are surprised after hearing this. Then the caster comes and tells the protagonist to get ready to stand on the podium to receive his reward. The protagonist leaves. Reynold tells his son that he did well. Reynold replies that he will work even harder once they return to their country. On the stage, the protagonist was ready to receive his reward, and the one who came to give him the trophy was Bayam-jun. After this, they both went to a coffee. Bayam-jun asked him where he learned alchemy and why he participated in the contest. The protagonist replied that he studied by himself, and he really needed this rock. The reason that he could endure the hard life in the academy was all thanks to Yuna. Suddenly, a warning appears, telling him that he detected the movement of the devil worshipper. And they both start to feel the evil aura, but they both were very familiar with this evil mana. And the one with the evil mana was Yuna. Her mana was cursed. One day, while he was in the academy, he listened to some students talking about him, how he got the first place in the exams without having any ability. He passes between them to go downstairs and accidentally hits one of them. The student, seeing that he had hit him, trips him, making the protagonist fall down the stairs. Suddenly, Yuna appears and tells them to apologize and tells them to stop talking shit behind someone's back. He had made a potion of fire that increases the mana temporarily and gives fire resistance. And his unique ability had increased because of his concentration, and as well as his limit to his skill usage. Reynold comes close to the protagonist and grabs him furiously, telling him that there was no way that a dog like him made a soul-class potion, and thinks that he was hiding something. Reynold comes and tells his son to stop, and he scolds him for putting his father's face in shame. Reynold replies that he was committing fraud. His father replies that if he was calling his father eyes and nodded hole. He creates a potion and drinks it. This potion contained that vast amount of her knowledge. There was a lot of knowledge. He wonders if he will be able to absorb it all. Suddenly, he gets a warning saying that the level gap was too big. His head hurt, but he wanted to keep going. So he uses his mana to fill the mana deficiency. Now he had temporarily acquired mastery over alchemy, and all his knowledge and experience about alchemists were increasing. Eden was impressed, and he could feel someone else's energy that was way different from the time he was learning alchemy. Finally, he absorbs all the knowledge thanks to the fact that he trained last week. The dungeons had a completely different ecosystem from the real world, being perfectly favorable environments for the monsters who habited the dungeons. The air inside the dungeon wasn't made just like that. If someone dies inside the dungeon, their corpse melts away, leaving only grudges. The energy of that grudge would contaminate the dungeon. Such a contaminated dungeon can stab someone's organs and even kill them. It had been 55 minutes since he was exposed to the contamination. The contamination was growing stronger and his body was being subjected to locomotory restrictions. The Tower of Eden had auto-purification, so he never faced contamination before. Inside, she saw a big stone with some blood. She came close and touched the blood. Suddenly, the blood started boiling and she absorbed all the blood. She wondered if it was an illusion since the blood stain had also disappeared. She had fallen into a dungeon illusion trap, cursing all her mana. The protagonist tells her that he would have a look. He activates his mana, and since the Everton organization was a demon-worshipping group, they could curse by borrowing the power of the demon. He converts his mana into divine power, and he emerges as the lesser priestess, Esther. Now the priestess is blessing him. He has no choice but to fight back with divine power. He wonders what he is going to learn first, the real swordsmanship or how to handle mana, or magic. The door gets closed, and the air circulation inside the training room is suspended, and some light begins to shine on the floor. June wants to teach him some things, but he has learned a lot of the theory in the academy, so now he decides to teach him with some real experiences. That's why he is contaminating the training room. A sticky energy was trying to overwhelm him. He falls down to the ground, he couldn't control his body, and he felt like he had a swamp inside. This is how the air was inside the dungeons. So now he decides to teach him with some real experiences. That's why he is contaminating the training room. A sticky energy was trying to overwhelm him. He falls down to the ground, he couldn't control his body, and he felt like he had a swamp inside. This is how the air was inside the dungeons. Even if it was virtual reality, it was hard to stand up. That's why he must get used to the pollution first before going into a dungeon. June wanted him to show his hidden power. The protagonist couldn't breathe, but after some time, he could barely steady his breathing. The dungeons had a completely different ecosystem from the real world, being perfectly favorable environments for the monsters who habited the dungeons. During those hard times in the academy, Yuna was his first friend in the academy. Kang Taemin and Ki Yuna were famous in various departments of the academy. However, he was still harassed since the top-ranked and second top-ranked of the practical examination hung out with a failure like him. Fighting in class was prohibited, but still, Yuna beat all the students who harassed him. That was the reason he felt grateful and sorry to them. Taemin asks her if she was good now because she didn't look like this the last time they saw each other. She replies that she went to a dungeon to inspect it. It was only a preliminary inspection of the dungeon's entrance, so they were not alone. The professors were with them. Everton is going to raid the academy, meaning that Yuna and Taemin could be in danger. He wants to call the professors, but after thinking that Everton could find that out and change their plans, he decides not to call them. He calms down and thinks that he needs to stop them first since Everton is also the organization he created. He has to take care of this no matter what. He doesn't want people to get hurt because of him, especially Yuna and Taemin. He comes out of his room and sees the gym that the workers built the other day. June tells him that this is his training room. The protagonist wonders how it is possible to put such a training room in a house basement, being better than the academy's gym. Yuna feels that all the energy that was oppressing her has disappeared. They are both surprised that he had been able to eliminate the cursed mana. The protagonist tells them that this was nothing. They have helped him a lot every day in the academy. This is the least he could do for them. Taemin congratulates him for awakening his power. The protagonist tells them that he has a master now, but he doesn't tell them that his master is June. And he apologizes to them for not being in touch with them because they are his precious friends. This night, he feels very tired because he has been drinking and playing a lot. Suddenly, he gets a message saying that he has satisfied the episode's requirement and he will receive a reward. The next day, the protagonist went to the academy for the trip. While he was waiting, Saren came and told him that she was going on the trip as well because she was selected and she received the scholarship. He thinks that, setting aside Yuna and Taemin, if something went wrong, Saren would really be in danger. Now, they both arrived. Then June arrived, and all three of them were impressed that he was going to the dungeon with them. The protagonist got nervous because he didn't want to get attention. He wants to go home. June comes close and greets the protagonist and tells him why he was pretending to not know his master. Seeing that he had no way to hide it, he presents his master to his friends. He replies that he read it in a book, and they were not evil spirits for now. If they attack them first, something bad would happen. June decides to believe him for now. He orders the others to not attack them for now. They would stay alert until they attacked first. All of them were confused. Han Yujil replies, furious, that if he wanted to take them as his disciples too. June tells him that he would address all his complaints later. Then, the head of swordsmanship department comes and says that he didn't care about his disciple, and this was a matter of the student's safety. He tells June that the protagonist said that because he was just scared of the ghosts. 1 week later, he told his friends that he was going on the dungeon trip with them. On the Everton guard, one of the Everton members tells his boss that Yuna definitely fell into the trap, but the reaction had disappeared, wondering what would have happened. They were preparing seeds again. When they let their guard down thinking it's the lowest grade dungeon, he would plant the seeds again. But this time, if he failed, he would die as a punishment. The next day, the protagonist went to the academy for the trip. While he was waiting, Saren came and told him that she was going on the trip as well because she was selected and she received the scholarship. He also improved his alchemy, so he created some intermediate class potions and put them up for auction. And thanks to that, he was able to earn some money. He went to an artifact department store and bought high-quality equipment with the money he made from selling potions. Improving his swordsmanship skill, he was able to completely master the sword, and now he could practice his swordsmanship unconsciously. He even bought an extraterrestrial bracelet that distorts space and holds up to 200 kilograms of objects. Suddenly, he gets a call from Bayam-jun. He picks it up. Bayam-jun tells him that the association asked him a favor, saying that student safety is important, so he decided to go there as the chief manager. There were high-ranking personnel and professors too, so seeing that his master was going as well, meaning that it would be super safe, he tells Bayam-jun that he wanted to go as well. He thinks that the training was being effective because he got a bit of muscles, and his stats improved as well. And on top of that, he was able to obtain some information on the dungeon the academy was planning to visit. Field trip in 1 week. They said it was near the surroundings of the Shepherd of Light Tower. Fortunately, this dungeon was classified with the lowest difficulty. Even then, there would be personnel to guard the students. He had been preparing a lot for the Everton attack the past week. And thanks to his master's training, he not only improved his physique, but he also improved the speed of operating mod. Bayam-jun comes close and greets the protagonist and tells him why he was pretending to not know his master. Seeing that he had no way to hide it, he presents his master to his friends. After several minutes on the bus, they arrive at the Night of Scream. This was a scary forest. Han Yujil was behind and furious that someone like the protagonist, weakling, was his disciple. He really hated him. After walking for a while, they come close to ghosts. The protagonist remembers this episode and tells Bayam-jun that no matter what happened, they shouldn't attack the ghosts. Bayam-jun replied that this was a dungeon, and they were evil spirits. He tells Bayam-jun that he wanted to go as well, telling him that he had quit the academy while believing in him. He couldn't even dream of going on a dungeon trip until he gets his attacker license. At a time like this, he at least wants to get a taste. Bayam-jun, after thinking that he had reached the level where he could clear the lowest level dungeon alone, decides to take him, but with the condition that he would have to stick by his side. 1 week later, he told his friends that he was going on the dungeon trip with them. On the Everton guard, one of the Everton members tells his boss that Yuna definitely fell into the trap, but the reaction had disappeared, wondering what would have happened. The protagonist remembers this episode and tells Bayam-jun that no matter what happened, they shouldn't attack the ghosts. Bayam-jun replied that this was a dungeon, and they were evil spirits. The protagonist tells him their appearance gives you goosebumps, but they weren't attacking. If they really had the thought of attacking, they would have done it as soon as they saw them. Bayam-jun asks him how he knew that. This was an episode that the protagonist had written. The Night of Scream, with an easy difficulty, a cemetery of souls who died after suffering all their lives, full of resentment, feel a strong desire for the bodies of living beings. He must save these children as the author of the story. Using the talisman that Prina gave him, he is able to make the evil spirits feel good, making them vanish away. The Night of Scream was cleared. The immersion ended, and his body received a backlash because he used a power stronger than his body's capability. As he advanced in the ranks, all his skills leveled up by 1. He had obtained the enhanced mana passive. He had cleared the Night of Scream by using a hidden method, and Lightbringer had declared that she would continue watching over him. All of them approached to see if the protagonist was alright. Bayam-jun had never seen such power with such side effects. Bayam-jun tells the students to take care of the protagonist and take him to the hospital as soon as possible. The Everton man tells him that he won't let anyone leave this place, but Bayam-jun attacks him by grabbing him from the head and throwing him into the ground, telling them that he didn't have enough time so they could attack him at once. The next day, the protagonist wakes up in the hospital. He asks Bayam-jun if everyone was alright. Bayam-jun replied that some scientist showed up and took care of it. He congratulates him for doing well, and he passed out and scared all of them. He was worried that he might die early using that skill too recklessly. He wanted to protect his friends with all his strength because he used to get only help from them. He begs him to believe him, he could save all of them. Bayam-jun believes him and gives him an illusion ring that could make a bunch of clones using mana. He said that he would take care of this, but since they had already transformed into evil spirits, there was a huge possibility that he would fail. But he had to be the one doing this, because he made those children that way. Those children were either abandoned by their parents and used as human shields in the war or lost their parents and suffered enough pain. So this mustn't end with a fight. He wanted to eliminate them by giving them peace. He orders his friends to take him to a hospital and request recovery potions from the association. But suddenly, some tentacles attacked Bayam-jun. He was able to block them. He was attacked by Everton. They told him that if he didn't want to die, he should hand over the 8th hero. Bae-jun tells the students to take care of the protagonist and take him to the hospital as soon as possible. The Everton man tells him that he won't let anyone leave this place, but Bae-jun attacks him by grabbing him from the head and throwing him into the ground, telling them that he didn't have enough time so they could attack him at once. Bae-jun replies to the man that if he had forgotten who was responsible for this dungeon. Han Yujil tells him that inside the dungeon, you must suspect everything and treat them as your enemies. That was something he wrote in his textbook. Bae-jun tells him that he didn't know how the leaders treated their team members. It was too late, and the dungeon difficulty changed from low to intermediate. Now, the ghosts started running towards them, and the fog was getting thicker. Bae-jun asks the protagonist if now they could step in. He replies that now it was too late. Due to the wrong approach, the episode was upgrading from Night of Scream to Night of Nightmare, and all the ghosts transformed into evil spirits with murderous intentions. Bae-jun was surprised by seeing his magic and wonders if he used the same ability before in the training room. But this, in comparison, it felt much more powerful, and wonders how he got this strong within just 2 weeks. He thinks that he was really a monster. Extending his mana, he is able to create a mana rain, making all the evil spirits retreat. Even though the children became evil spirits because of the wrong approach. Originally, it was simply an episode that would have ended with the mournful memorialization of the dead children. He must save these children as the author of the story. Using the talisman that Prina gave him, he is able to make the evil spirits feel good, making them vanish away. He emerges as the heretic of the temple, Michelle Condor, a figure who spent her childhood under the guidance of the priests of a small temple. And while living as a priestess, she saved countless souls with resentments outside the temple after receiving a revelation from the Lightbringer. He had succeeded at immersing in a low-class priest earlier, but Michelle was a priest of a higher level. He wasn't sure if he would succeed. The Lightbringer finds him and wonders who he is. He didn't expect to see Prina like this. She started praying for him. Eden was surprised that he was able to get prayed by Prina and his master, and wonders who he was in reality. He was confused because he received a vast amount of information. Eden tells him to not be surprised as he got it as a reward for clearing the dungeon last time, the enhanced mana system. He didn't expect it to be that strong. He felt like the radius was almost 1 kilometer. After walking for a while, he finally finds the dungeon entrance. Seeing that the difficulty of the dungeon was low, he gets happy because he could clear it by himself alone. He thinks that even being a low-ranked dungeon, it looked very scary. Suddenly, a gold window appears saying that she was disappointed. He wonders if it was the Lightbringer. She replies that he should call her Prina instead of that nickname. He was surprised that he wasn't only able to talk with Eden, but now he could even talk to Prina. Prina tells him to be more confident. She saw him helping the young souls to move last time. She encourages him, telling him that she believed in him. With this boost of confidence, he decided to enter. Suddenly a boy falls from the sky. The boy was him. This scene was showing what happened to him during the month-end assessments. He was getting beaten by Han Yujil. He wonders why the system was showing him this situation. Han Yujil and his friends were making fun of him after beating him. Suddenly, he gets an email telling him that he had only 4 days left of his permitted leave of absence. He would be expelled if he exceeded the limit. He gets furious, and the dungeon starts detecting his fear and brings back the person he feared in the past. Suddenly, Han Yujil appears behind him. This was the initiation trial. Prina tells him to be more confident. She saw him helping the young souls to move last time. She encourages him, telling him that she believed in him. With this boost of confidence, he decided to enter. He wanted to take care of it as soon as possible because it was near his house. The dungeon starts generating and starts creating a trial looking back through his past memories. He was sleeping and woke up to the noise of his phone. He wonders why he was lying on his bed when he was sure that he had entered into the dungeon. He looks at the wall and sees that now he had month-end assessments and tables from the academy. He wonders if he had traveled back in time. He was shocked when he heard this. 2 months ago was when his novel was plagiarized. He goes to the place where the dungeon was located. He uses his academy advanced skill called detection and searches for the dungeon. Now his range of detection was doubled. He was confused because he received a vast amount of information. Eden tells him to not be surprised as he got it as a reward for clearing the dungeon last time, the enhanced mana system. He didn't expect it to be that strong. He felt like the radius was almost 1 kilometer. After walking for a while, he finally finds the dungeon entrance. Seeing that the difficulty of the dungeon was low, he gets happy because he could clear it by himself alone.